Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you to the Activeo team for sponsoring this and inviting me to rejoin today. It was fun to be in St. John early this year for those of you who were there. And for those of you who weren't, I know it's a great province, and I'm glad you are able to spend a little time with us here this morning. I'm going to share my screen and we can get going here. I'm going to be taking you through some slides, not too many of them, and just to give you the storyline going deeper, as Cheryl mentioned, after my presentation earlier this year, calculating the amount of friction your organization is causing and how to become frictionless. So with that, I'm going to go through and just review a couple of things. First is, this is what the webinar invite was all about. Customer service doesn't cause problems. They're caused by other groups. Learning how to be frictionless means you can cut costs, you can grow revenue, create loyal fans. It really is a powerful tool to improve not just the cost structure, but also customer experience. We'll be sending these slides after the webinar, so you'll be able to get them, and the call is being recorded as well. So just to recap, before I went to MCI, I was serving in the U.S. Navy for a little while with McKinsey & Company, the consulting firm, and then with an IVR startup company called Automated Call Processing Corporation. We were bought by MCI. And then after I stayed at Amazon for a number of years, I formed Riva Solutions and co-founded this Linebridge Alliance. And along the way, spent 5 years working with an AI company called Antuit, which was a very exciting time period as well. My first book came out in 2008, second one in 2015, and the one that we'll be focusing on today came out last year, called The Frictionless Organization: Deliver Great Customer Experiences with Less Effort. So the new book is broken down into these 9 chapters, and we'll be talking quite a bit about the first 2 areas, the create collective focus, and also about the middle box called Drive Strategic Actions. And we'll actually be doing a little hands-on during the webinar today, so you can kind of experience what it's like to be able to go through these steps. Everything from the understand why customers are contacting us, to assigning and prioritizing them into different steps, and then the 5 actions that you see in the middle box. We'll be going through this in quite some detail today. Let me back up before I go any further. If you do have questions or comments while we go through here, please put them in the comments or the chat field. Umberto will be reviewing those, and then we'll be bringing those up when we finish the session. Umberto, if I can ask you if there are any questions that are pertinent or relevant to a particular slide that you think we should pause and discuss at that time, please feel free to interrupt me, and we can talk about that while we're going through that particular slide. Otherwise, we can wait to the end.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, with that.
Yeah.
I lifted from LinkedIn something which is very wordy, but I really liked it. It was from our mutual business partner, Stefan Pucker, who is in Germany. He runs a company called Wokas out of Germany. And I'm not going to read all of this, but what he wrote it in LinkedIn as a way to get his readership or his friends on LinkedIn to kind of understand what's going on here. And he uses a quote from Jeff Bezos that I continue to use as well, which is, our customers don't contact us unless something's wrong. So we want that number to move down. And so contact rate, which we will call CPX today, CPX, is really a very important indicator. It was at Amazon, like it is for many companies we've worked with since, one of the most important, if not the most important KPI and metric for them to consider. What Stefan suggests is take a 4-year view of contact volumes across all those channels and the customer base. And then for each year, divide the volume of contacts by the volume of customers. We're going to do that exact same thing today. And then, as he says here, if the contact rate does not fall significantly or even continues to rise, you have an urgent need for action. And we'll talk about the implications of that when we go through this today. So there'll be 5 sections in today's discussion. I'll talk about how not to do it. I'll go through a series of steps about analyzing intents. And then we'll play with this value irritant matrix, as we called it, and you'll be able to try your hand at coming up with what the different actions will be, and then sort of a follow-up slide at the end, and then we can follow up with discussions. So, how not to do it? A lot of companies that I've seen over the years have a report that looks kind of like this. On a particular date or particular week. In this case, I just picked a date, August 22nd. We had 6,218 calls that had to do with billing. 3,800 were other. 2,670 were usage. 2,543 were tech issues, etc., adding up to 20,000 calls that day. Now, this is a fairly large center and a fairly large operation, but it makes the numbers work when you see some subsequent slides. So let me just ask everybody to think about this. What are the problems with capturing reporting contacts this way? If this is the only way that you're looking at the different reasons or different customer contacts. And since I'm on video mode now, I've got my screen in front of me and I can't see anybody with a hand up or anything else. So I'd like you to just unmute and just shout out what you think would be the problems capturing and reporting them this way.
I mean, I feel I'm just gonna jump in. I feel like it's not detailed enough. Like other is the second category. Like what does that mean? It's not really giving a proper impact for what that could be. Just it shouldn't be the second option up there in terms of volume. So I feel like it needs to have further categories to properly analyze the data.
Okay, good. That's very good. Anybody else?
Also, it's not comparing it to what the actual volume is for that organization. So you know how many calls are coming in, but what is the amount of shipments or customers? I think there has to be a correlation between calls and a total number of transactions. So I would say either customers or products that the company is, in our case, is transportation. So it would be what is the total number of shipments in comparison to the number of calls that we would be handling. Right. That would be a great comparison.
Okay. Terrific. One other possible problem, if I can put anybody else on the spot.
There's no trend or anything it's comparing it to.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. You've hit all three, which is terrific. This is going to be a great session today. Not detailed enough, and you never want to see other at all, but let alone being the second biggest one.
Yeah.
And you're not showing against the actual volume, as Lucy mentioned, shipments, customers, etc., and there's no trend.
Correct.
But it is shocking to see how many organizations still keep it at this level. Okay, let's start drilling down a little bit further. The first step in analyzing intents is to begin to break it down, as one of you just mentioned. And so let's convert those categories that I showed in the previous slide to what we would want, what we'll call here customer intents. And here we like to use the customer's own language. And there are a lot of reasons for that. First of all, it's easy for agents to understand it and tools to collect it, but we'll figure that out in a moment here. Between 25 and 50 in total, which is actually not a lot compared to what a lot of companies do. And there is no option for other or general. You have to pick something. So 2 questions here. How can an organization, how can we collect data at this level of detail? And what's still missing? And I think we've sort of touched on what's still missing, but let's start with the first one. What are some ways to collect and report these data that your teams have experienced or that you've seen? How can we collect data at this level of detail?
Would survey be one of them?
Could be survey. You could look at surveys. You could look at social media content. You could look at do some text analysis. That's right. That's one way. What's another way? Related to surveys, in a way.
Well, another way that you would have to do it is depending on if the customer is coming through to the contact center, would be to have the team track the types, which is we already have here, right, into details. So very familiar with doing that through line of business codes or things like that, so that you have accurate information on the what the customer is calling in regards to.
Okay. I'll suggest one that is a good interim step sometimes. Most of your organizations have QA teams that do detailed analysis of a sample of contacts. We've often seen QA teams add this type of analytic method, intent analysis, so they can give you some good understanding, because they really understand the nuances of what happens in a contact.
Yes.
But related to surveys, there's one other one, which is using speech and text analytics. Are any of your organizations today using speech or text analytics to monitor what happens during calls, keeping it in speech form or moving it to text form?
Not
Yes,
current.
Bill, we have one chat from Kevin. So
right.
he says that IVR key press, speech analytics, and team member tracking as well.
Correct.
Good, good, that's
Team
good.
member, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, looking at IVR exit states, you can look at chatbot exit states too. Where was the customer when he or she exited the chatbot and then needed to move downstream to speak to an agent or contact an agent, could be stayed in chat. Okay, so now we've got here. So let me just talk briefly about the right-hand side. So here, same date, same total of 20,701. The first one is, why is my bill so high? Almost 17% of the total contacts for that day. And here we're going to talk about agent-assisted contacts. So if we can just focus on ones where the agent is needed handling a phone call, an email, or a chat. The second one is, my bill is wrong. Third one is, I want a refund. So all three of them have to do with monetary issues, clearly. And then we start again getting into some interesting ones. I want to cancel a service in my account. If you skip down a little bit further, there's one that says, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, I want to cancel my account, is about midway down. So these are just ones that I've made up as kind of a composite of recent client work that we've done, just to give you a flavor of what your customers might be saying and what they might be requesting. So let's go a little bit further now. Step 2. The next step is to start adding operating costs. So we take the same count in the same order that you see it there on that same date. And now we start adding operating costs. And operating costs would be, the example of that, operating costs would be the actual labor cost that we have and the cost of supporting the customers. So how can we figure out the the operating costs? What's a way to do that? It's actually just a quick math formula, but what are the inputs, do you think, to come up with operating costs?
A simple one, I guess, would be the hours took to kind of resolve those matters.
Yep, that's right. And the other part of the other product, as it's called in math, it's hours times
salary.
There you go. Salaries and labor costs. This is always an issue. How much cost do you burden? Here, I've assumed for the moment, you can assume all sorts of things as long as the assumptions are revealed, that it's actual direct labor costs and not the overhead within the center.
Yes.
So looking visually at this, what has changed? When you look at the same intents from top to bottom, again, they're being shown now in the order of their volumes and count. When you compare that with the operating costs, what sort of patterns and what sort of changes can you start noticing here?
Some issues require more work than others, so the priority would change on how we action each item.
Yes, exactly. So
And
for
even
example,
though-
down here, my device stopped working, which is a technical type issue. Went from maybe number 7 or 8, whatever that is, in terms of volume, to being number 5
when it comes to
in terms
cost.
of total cost, which jumps up the priority list. That's right. Other ones move down, of course, because it moves both ways. Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
So we start getting a little more flavor of what to do here. So we've moved from a high level of categories to more detailed intents, and now we're starting operating costs. What's still missing from being able to take this a little bit further? That's sort of a tougher question to ask. I wonder if anybody can start thinking about what they would still like to learn about these particular intents.
Well, I guess my mind goes to the client experience.
Mhm.
Like this is very focused on cost, but not necessarily on like client sentiment toward the friction.
Okay.
And I'm gonna jump in and say, since it's only counting for one day, a trend, maybe this was month end, and that's why we have such high bill numbers. What about the middle of the month?
Gotcha.
Or I mean, it's just August 22nd, so not, but like, you know, how is it different from the beginning of the month versus the end of the month, middle?
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to add another one that's missing, and then we will get to customer impact and we will get to trend. So good points. Now I'm going to add something that we talked about in the webinar for those of you that attended it in St. John, which is now we're going to stay in the costs for the moment, and we're going to add downstream costs. So downstream costs are a really important addition to this formula. And this is all the post-contact work needed in order to resolve the issue. And you can see that not all of the intents have downstream costs in this column over here. Some of them are zero, but some of them are pretty substantial. In fact, they are maybe half of, if not more than half of, the cost to operate, to actually handle the contact. And examples would be issuing a refund, researching a credit request or an issue about credit, determining what the tech support problem is. In the terms of canceling account, that could be pretty substantial to figure out how to save the customer, try to dig into the root causes of why they contacted you in order to cancel it in the first place. And I didn't sign up for X down here actually has double the downstream costs as it does for operating costs. And an example for that might be that there was a real switch that happened and the agent really can't fix it on the call, but they have to give it to someone maybe in a back office to figure out what happened. The wrong product was shipped, the wrong order was placed, the wrong refund was made, things like that. And just to so we can move into the other items missing that you mentioned, now we have a richer cost analysis. And we can see on the right-hand side here that the number one count has now moved down to be like the number 4 in terms of total cost. Why is my bill so high? It's still pretty substantial, but it's now sitting behind, I want a refund and my bill is wrong. And even down here, my device stopped working, a technical issue. So now we have a more complete cost picture. What's important about this, which we'll get to later, is that these downstream costs are often in someone else's budget. They're not in the customer service team's budget. Sometimes they are, but as I hinted, sometimes it's a back office function. Sometimes it's in a group that does dispatch, sending out someone to do a repair. It might be in a billing department itself in order to research what needs to be done or to issue the refund itself. So downstream costs can be quite powerful. Overall, you can see down here, it's about $1 million versus 2.7 million. So a little bit less than half of what the operating costs are. Now let's talk about some of the items that you mentioned before, which is what's missing. Now let's start trending the contact data, the actual counts. We'll go back to counts for the moment. We will get back to costs in a little bit here. So what is this picture telling us on a month-over-month basis? This is an average daily count per month. What is this telling you so far?
A business is growing, or inquiries are on an upward trend.
Right.
As the volume increases.
As the volume increases, March seems to be a hot month, or it could just be an outlier.
Yep.
March.
Okay, that's a good summary of it completely. I purposely put March in there as an outlier. Maybe it's a seasonal blip that happens every year. We don't know because we don't have year over year yet, but it gives you kind of a start to think about. It dropped down. You see the trend line dropped down to almost what it was before March, but then it continued to rise. So you're right. It could be volume increase. I think as Lucy mentioned earlier, maybe shipments continue to grow quite a bit. and customers grew grew a lot too. Let's go a little bit further in this one. Now we're looking at count per customer, which was one of the points that Lucy had mentioned earlier. So now we're looking at the first CPX function, which is count per customer. So the total assisted contacts divided by all of our active customers, meaning customers that have an active account. So what's this telling you now? I could have put this side by side. That's the previous one. Here's this one. What is this telling you now?
What customers went up in March 23, and also the on both slides sort of coincide, right? So the shipments went up, and the number of transactions went up in similar fashion.
Right.
But the dip in February isn't really noticed in the other one.
That's right. It's
Yes.
less dramatic. It's been muted down some, right? Like here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Here-
like there's still an increase in Feb, but the count per customer went down. Like
Down.
the lowest point it's been since July
Right.
2022.
February, yeah.
If you it's again, since we have August of, oh boy, sorry about that.
Nice picture.
Yeah, thank you, my daughters. We have August of 22 at this metric of 3.2, and then now we have August of 23 at 3.6. So the count per customer has gone up on a year-over-year basis here. Should that concern us? What do you think? When you look back at what these issues are, these are the issues that they contact us about.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you want it to be reducing, not increasing.
Right.
Correct.
In this sense, because, and again, you haven't had much time at all to study what those different intents were, but very few of those intents are what we would call good intents. Most of them are complaints. Most of them are frustrations or problems. And that's what we're going to get to as the core part of this session coming up in a few moments here. Okay, now I'm going to add something that my co-author and I hint in the next to last chapter of the book, but we're sort of inventing a new metric here. So now let's calculate the CPX by dividing into those customers who actually contacted us. These are active accounts, all active customers. This is if you say that only about 20% of our customers really do contact us. It's a number for you to think about in your organizations. If you flip it around, 80% of your customers are not contacting you about issues. That's pretty much what we've seen with many companies. It's sometimes maybe as low as 60%, but let's say 80%. And in the book, we talk about who are those 80%? Are they happy campers? Things are working great for them? Or are they silent sufferers who are not even bothering to contact you with problems? So I'm not going to try to go through this today with you because I want to get to the exercise here in a moment. But it's important to figure out, what are those 80% doing and thinking? Are they happy or are they suffering? But this just gives you a flavor that overall, when you look at this metric, first of all, it's a higher metric if you look at the y-axis, obviously, because I've brought in the customers that are really only contacting you, the 20%. And it still goes up year over year, in this case from 18 up to 23. So really high number of contacts. Okay. Now let's bring in the one metric that I did select in terms of customer experience or client experience. There are a number of them that we can use. One is first contact resolution. Another one is a transactional NPS or customer effort score or CSAT score. But I chose one here, which is pretty painful, which is customer churn. Not too easy to calculate, but very, very important. Here we've looked at the customer counts that have churned within 60 days after the customer contacts us. So these are what we would call the most painful contacts. It includes, as you see the rise down here, I want a refund. I want to cancel a service on my account, which is here. This one here is my device stopped working. This big blip way down here, again, this is in the order of costs. I've indexed costs here. I want to cancel my account. That means you weren't successful contacting, keeping the accounts. Refund didn't come as promised. I didn't sign up for X and so forth. So I've kind of given you some hints here, but what is this telling us? And what value is it, do you think, looking at the customer experience? I can't remember who it was a few moments ago who suggested adding client experience. So this is the one example that I'll give you today. Any reactions to this? What is this telling us?
I mean, it's showing us the reasons for why customers are, or why we are losing business. So essentially tackle these, get more information from them. Why did they, what is the reason behind wanting to cancel the account? What's the purpose behind the reason? Is there a trend with these reasons?
Yes.
Is this happening in a specific location? Like, figure out where it's happening and try to stop it as soon as possible so we can retain as much business as possible.
Okay. Yep, exactly. It starts giving you a sense of where the pain is really coming from so you can dig into the reasons why. Even I want to cancel my account, while it might be what the customer is saying, is only the opening act, because that will always prompt an agent to say, well, why is that? What can I do about that? And then the customer might say, well, it's because my device keeps breaking, or you never get back to me as promised, or I can't figure out how something can work. So there's always going to be a root cause behind something as serious as I want to cancel my account or cancel a service in my account. So you're right, that it gives you where to start to figure out how you're losing business. Okay, so what do we do now to become frictionless is really what we're going to step through today. I extracted here for this exercise 10 of the intents and sorted them by total cost and greatest pain. I'm just using an index here, a double index. Why is my bill so high, as you might remember, was the one that had the highest count. That's right here in the middle of this table. Why is my bill so high was the one with the highest count, but it is not the one with the highest cost. That's going to be, I want a refund and my bill is wrong. The percent churn, again, on an index basis, using why is my bill so high is 100. We have, I need help with my app is very low at 14. And then we have some that are much, much higher in the sense of cancel service or cancel my account. So what we're going to play with here in the next few minutes is with these 10 intents, I'm going to ask you to take a little time to think about where you would position each of these 10 intents on this 2x2 matrix. We call this the value irritant matrix, value irritant, value irritant. So from the customer or client point of view on the x-axis, would you consider this intent valuable for them or something that they didn't want to have to contact you about? They want to contact you about this if you stay on the right side, or they don't want to contact you about it. It represents an irritant for them on the left side. And then from your organization perspective, by the same token, was it valuable? Is it I shared this with you before. Some of you may have read about it, but now I'm going to ask you to play with it. So, Steve, I think we've got 9 or 10 participants other than the 4 of us moderating. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. So, group setup. Do you still have the 5 groups, or did you come up with a smaller number? I'm just wondering how many groups you've got.
We can have actually like maybe 3 groups.
Yeah, let's go down to 3 groups.
Okay.
What we're going to do is we're going to split you all into 3 groups and ask you to do the following. Oh, now it's going to be confusing. Okay. Because I had this preset for 5. Let's just do this on the fly. That'll be fine. So group 1, group 1 is going to do, this will be fine. Group 1 is going to do the first 2 intents. I want a refund and my bill is wrong. And group 2 will do the next 2. My device stopped working and why is my bill so high? And group 3 will do the next 2. I want to cancel a service and I want to cancel my account. Okay, so there'll be 3 groups and you'll be assigned to those in a breakout session in Zoom. And So I'd like to have, when you go in those groups, figure out, see if you can agree, and we'll give you about 5 minutes, which should be fine for those two, because you're only looking at 2 intents. Where would you position it on this matrix? And then add a little note about whether you think a preempt or alert action would also befit that particular reason. In other words, do any of can you, in the interim, while you're trying to fix the problem, come up with some sort of an alert or a preemptive contact with your customers for each of these different intents? Any questions about that before we split you out?
Nope.
We're keeping 4 intents at the bottom here. And as I mentioned over here, if you want to try your hand at any of these 4 down here at the bottom, about the refund, sign up, help with app, and schedule, feel free to do that as well. They have relatively low cost and not too high churn, so that's why they're a little bit lower in the list. But we'll play with the top 4 in particular. But any questions before we do the breakouts? Okay, then let's go into the breakout sessions, and we'll come back together in about 5 minutes here.
Sure. Just give me 1 minute, Bill. I will be starting the sessions. Okay.
Okay, I know I made it difficult for you to go on the fly here. Let me just give you, let me just talk on just for a moment about preempt. David and I added preempt to this in the book. We've always sort of talked about it. We thought maybe preempt was subsumed or inside of the digitized corner only. Digitized would be having an IVR solution or something on an app or something in a chatbot, for example. But we when we went out and talked to companies about how they handle customer experience and cost containments, they told us that they were adding more and more robust messages or alerts. So something like, I need to reschedule my next payment down here. That could lend itself to an alert where if you figured out that some of your customers or clients might be in financial stress, or they have asked for reschedules in the past, you might want to send out an alert beforehand saying your payment is due on September 28th. I'll make a date in the future, October 4th. If you need to reschedule, click here and it'll go to your app or go to some other form, and you can just fill in when you think you can get us some money. Now, I'm being very generous with that particular offering, of course, but maybe your company has clients or customers like that with whom and for whom you want to reschedule a payment. And that means you don't have to have them contact you for that issue, and you make it really easy for them to reschedule it. Now, you got to be careful about that from a cash collection point of view, but that's an example of a preempt. Another example of preempt is if you think that an item will not get to them on time. If you're sending a refund check, if you're sending out a physical product, if you're running an airline and the flight's going to be running late or being canceled, clearly there are a lot of preemptive messages saying, sorry, our flight's going to be delayed by 2 hours, but don't worry, we've got you on our later flight that's still going to get you from Montreal to Toronto or whatever the connection might be. So a lot of different preempts and alerts are out there. Are you ready now?
Yes, Bill, all good. So I'll be starting the breakout sessions right now.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. I'll see everybody back in 5.
Yep. Okay. Okay. I think everybody in the on rooms right now. Perfect.
You're in the rooms? Okay, good.
Go to your room.
Perfect.
So that was good. I think again, I can't see any videos on the screen the way this presents, of course, but I did see the names pop up in the upper corner whenever they were contributing their suggestions or their answers. That was good.
So when you're talking about irritant, Bill,
yeah,
and from the company's perspective,
just give me 1 minute. I will be assigning 2, 3 down. Okay. Yeah, all good.
Okay.
I believe Sean needs to be assigned. Okay.
Yeah, done. Okay. Yeah,
Well,
he rejoined, so that's why. Yeah.
how would you define an irritant to a company versus a value? Irritant, I'm assuming, to a company would mean cost. Value would mean increased customer sat, increased profit, increased.
That's the first way I would start, Cheryl, is
Mhm.
is and the parallel approach to make that definition clear or clearer is to say, do we need to talk to the customer about this or not? Which is both a cost and value proposition. If we
Mhm.
don't really think we need to talk to the customer about this, or we don't really want to talk to them because it's just costing us money, or it's just interfering with what we're doing, we better label that as an irritant. But if we think that we should contact them because we don't know what's going on, or we think we're going to get more revenue or retain them, then we want to put that into value. When we do these, we usually give the breakout sessions a lot more than 5 minutes. But as I said yesterday, they talk about more than 2 issues. They talk about a bunch of issues or a bunch of intents. The debate is really good to hear. Well, wait a minute now. I think this is good for us to talk to them because we can try to cross-sell whenever someone contacts us. So it should be called a value. Someone else says, you're silly. If they're really upset with an issue, there's no way we're going to successfully cross-sell. So what about the underlying issue? The issue irritated them, and something we should not have to contact. We should not force them to have to contact them. We should fix the problem by eliminating it or coming up with a digital solution.
Right.
So the cross-sell, upsell usually comes up as a big issue, and it's nice to hear certain managers debate other managers say, no, we can't afford to cross-sell everything. We should only cross-sell on issues that have a high potential attachment rate.
Right. And you will get different responses what people determine as value. If you're looking at a customer care manager versus, like you said, an IT manager or a sales manager, like those folks, right? So
that's exactly right. And that's why it's fun to get the cross-sectional in the breakout sessions, so that the cross-functional rather, so that the different functions can debate about it. You get a finance manager, for example, who says, "Oh boy, we can save a lot of money by throwing everything into Eliminate."
Right.
When I say, well, but that's not really feasible. We really should offer self-service. So these are really wonderful. The entire sessions we do are typically 6 or 7 hours long.
Okay.
With about 45 minutes of introduction, and then we go through. We have 20 to 30 different intents, enough that represent 80% of the total cost is how we denominate it. And in fact, these 10 do represent about 80% of the total cost. It just turned out that way. I didn't structure it that way.
Right.
So we've covered the vast majority of the cost with just these 10 issues.
Yeah. And Bill, I have one input actually. Sorry, Humberto. So I actually spoke about the customer effort score actually during our GTech event. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I did touch about that actually, and then we got really good feedback about it. So one of my questions, like one of my thoughts actually, like, so for example, let's take the example of booking a ticket. Okay, like any ticket. So if I don't get any confirmation of the booking, I will be frustrated. Obvious, right? So I'll be starting with the chat. Then if I don't get any agent, I will be going to a voice channel, of course, right? But when I come to the voice channel, I already frustrated.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if we do the agent performance and the agent analytics based on the sentiment that we get from the audio recording, okay, it might not be accurate because the frustration is not coming from the agent. It's actually coming from the activity that I have to go through before. Okay. So how we measure this? Like how we measure the effort score and the root cause and the friction in terms of metrics.
Well, now you open up that beautiful Pandora's box of omni-channel, cross and omni-channel. You need to figure out what that previous upstream channel was all about. And listen, and also if the system can listen for a customer saying, or the system itself telling you that the customer started in channel 1 and now they came to channel 2, and they're upset in channel 2 because channel 1 blew it, not
Exactly.
because what anything happened in channel 2.
Yeah, exactly. So the biggest actually challenge is actually how we have the data map, like the journey map.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the biggest challenge that we have.
It's a big issue, and it's
a big issue.
It's a good data challenge. It's a big data challenge.
Exactly.
Literally a big data challenge. So should we get him back here?
Yeah. So
just-
I'll be
Yeah. Just before that, Bill, I was just being conscious of, the audience that we have, most of them are in the transportation logistics
Okay.
company. So churn customers, I believe, was a word that targeted them, because that happens when, let's say, the shipment is delayed or something like that.
Yeah.
So that could be like a reason, not only for, okay, we don't want to talk to this customer, but
Yeah.
we should, because we can cross-sell, to just what you said. So I just wanted to add that information.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I will be bringing them back all.
I see 30 seconds there.
Okay. Yeah, it will be closing in another 56 seconds. Okay.
56 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna I could fill this out real time. I'm gonna fill it out with a little piece of paper that I printed.
Okay.
And then what I'll do is I'll put their scores on here, their answers on here. When I send this deck back to you guys. And I'll send it as a PDF.
Yep.
I've got 2 calls coming up right after this is over. So it'll be like late morning my time today. I'll get this off to you, and then you'll be able to send off to the participants.
Sure. Perfect, Bill. Yeah.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay.
Okay, 5 seconds. Here we go.
Oops. We are back.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
How did you find that? Just kind of a quick shout out to anybody who wants to say, how did you find this little exercise? I didn't give you a lot of time for it, but what did you think of it?
It was good. We were mostly aligned in our group.
Oh,
And we're
good.
looking more preempt, like what are the things that we can do from an organization perspective?
Good.
Like when you see trends of customers week over week and looking at their volumes, if we're seeing things that, trends are going down, be proactive before the customer cancel accounts. Sometimes there's lots of indicators within your organization. If volumes are dropping, that's a good sign to say, hey, what's happening with this customer? Let's reach out to them and find out what happened. And if we do that for X number of customers, or, hopefully fix the issues for those to prevent further churn with customers down the road.
Excellent. No,
Yes.
looking for those pattern recognition early on. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then to have trends. And then looking at what's value, obviously, it is really important for the business to understand if we are setting customers up with services that they don't want, why are we doing that? So, try to root cause that and find out and put solutions in, so we're not creating the same issue for other customers down the road. So doing a lot more root cause analysis and figuring out what the actual cause is, and then putting in measurements to prevent that happening in the future with the customers.
Well, my job is done. That's good. You summarized it so well. Very good. Thank you for that. Let's just if I could get someone from group 1, tell us, what action did they set for I want a refund? Of the 4 actions.
We agreed on streamlining.
Okay.
So looking at the value, but before we did that, we thought about digitizing it. So in our organization, we do have the option where if there is a change in the rate, a notification goes out to the client, and they have the option to either accept or dispute the charges. We could have something like that digitized when it comes to final invoicing as well, where the customers have the option of either accepting or disputing a charge or the invoice at that point. So that would be the digitization of it, and it gives us an idea of what value we might be able to see a trend in that there might be a lot of customers, if there is a trend in what kind of refunds there are that are being requested, and if there is a way for us to either stop that service or modify the service in future. So that's the value that would be added to this.
And what about the second one? What about my bill is wrong? You guys handle that one too, I think.
Yeah.
Where did that go?
Begin, Barry, if anyone, I can go.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Sorry about that. No, I mean you're doing great. But I think my bill is wrong would be similar situation where we would have to figure out, leverage it, and where that issue might have happened, and perhaps figure out a way to do a better streamlining of the process. If it's a data entry issue, billing cycle issue, etc., and figure out what the reasons are.
Okay, how about group 2? You started with my device stopped working. And why is my bill so high? What were your 2 actions for those?
So device stopped working, we agreed that that should be in the eliminate category. And we also discussed that we should figure out what is the cause, or what issue is the actual concern for the customers. And if it is a recurring issue or a common known issue, then make sure that we have a preemptive message letting customers know that please note, we have noticed that there's an issue. We are diligently working on it. We appreciate your patience, just so that they're aware. And for why is my bill so high? Now, there was a little bit of discussion here, but we were essentially leaning towards leverage. So essentially the viewpoint was that the customer is not seeing the value that we are offering. So we should reach out to them to show them what the value is of the services that we are offering.
Okay.
But then the other discussion was, it's also an irritant for the customer to be calling when the bill is so high. So, that's where we had a little bit of discussions there. But it looks like it's good towards leverage. Let's explain to them, educate them why it is the way it is.
All right. Interesting choices here. What about group 3? I want to cancel a service and I want to cancel my account. You got both cancels right back to back there. What did you say? Group 3.
Lucy?
Anybody else? I can go if you want.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
No, I was going to say, so we pretty much looked at it the same way. We would want to streamline it, but it's definitely a let's talk and kind of promo situation. We might not want to digitize go ahead and cancel sort of idea. We pretty much came the same for both of them. Meanwhile, just like Feroza said, we want to kind of further find out why these are leading to this cancellation. So we'd want to either get ahead of it, streamline the process, but definitely not eliminate or digitize.
All right. Well, I'm glad you had some fun with it. I know we're running short on time here, so let me just do a little bit of a wrap up, and you'll get a copy of this afterwards too. This is how I did it for all 10, just to give you a flavor from my experience, which is only that. We never tell our clients what the answer should be. It's always a matter of debate, interaction, like you've begun to do here. I want a refund is usually one that gets in the upper left corner of Streamline. My bill is wrong typically is in the lower left for eliminate, but I understand how it could be up into Streamline as well. The third one, my device is stopped working, should almost always be down to eliminate. And then why is my bill so high is interesting. Group 2 put that into leverage. Typically that's down in eliminate, but you're always going to be talking to them anyway when they come in about it. And then the last 2, I did a little bit of a split there. I want to cancel my account, should almost always be let's talk up in leverage. But a lot of companies are beginning to move the idea of canceling a service in their account down to digitize. that
Yeah,
could
I see
also
the
move
difference.
up to leverage.
Yeah.
But it could go back and forth. The good thing about this, as I talked about with Cheryl and the Activeo team when you were out in your breakouts, is usually you'll have a lot more than 5 minutes to go through 2 issues, and you'll have different managers from your organization, some from IT, from finance, from marketing, from product, customer service, et cetera. It really works well when you have different points of view, and it winds up coming out with a really great consensus towards the end of the discussion. I recommend that you try it out, maybe with 1 or 2 intents, with a cross-functional group, and you'll really learn a lot from it. This is the final step that I have here, which is to assign, you eventually assign each of these intents to an owner. You start agreeing, you agree on what the targeted changes could be over time, do the root cause analysis, which several of you mentioned in your coming out of the breakout session, track progress week over week. Again, some of the things that were missing with the earlier data charts, make sure you look at the trends, and then celebrate. This is a tough challenge to deal with, but it's great to start seeing some movements in terms of reductions in the CPX and reductions in the action. So I'm going to stop sharing so I actually can see some faces here. We'll get this out to you afterwards. And I know we've hit sort of the witching hour here, but I would love to take any questions you might have if we have time for that now. And if there are questions that came in that I can answer separately, I can certainly do that afterwards and get the answers back to you all. Any questions or comments before we give the rest of your day back to you?
Bill, that was awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yes, excellent. Excellent.
Very informative.
I noticed
Thank you so much.
I noticed there are a couple of people that just joined the call, which tells me that there was probably a time zone mismatch that may have happened. But just rest assured that this session has been completely recorded. And I know Robert and Darlene, and notice that you've joined in here as well, that it'll be made available on our online platform for you as well shortly.
Bill, I did have one question for you, if you can quickly answer it, or maybe it's after.
I'm here. Yep.
The earlier on when we discussed the 80% that don't call in, how do we tackle that, yeah?
I love that question, and it's, first of all, first point is figure out what that answer is. It might be 50%, but it's still, even if it's only 50%, it means you're only talking to half your customers, and you're dwelling on the comments and responses and the worries of half your customers. So what do you do with the other half, or the other 80%, whatever it might be? First of all, there's really something simple, which is reach out to them, figure out who they are and reach out to them. If they're new customers, you can cloak it as a welcome message. If it's customers have been around for a year or two, maybe they're into their second or third version of their account with you, then you can figure out, by the way, my puppy is ready for his walk. So just came over after being quiet for the last hour and a half. Anyway, but you can reach out to them and just say, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. I mean, very blunt. Or wanted to make sure you're aware that something, we got this new product coming out here. It is incredible what the reaction is from that, because customers go, well, I meant to contact you about this and I just didn't know how to do it. Or, I had a problem a couple of years ago, didn't get a good response. I'm just trying to deal with it myself. So reaching out to them is really, really important. And what's good is, as you begin to reduce the rate of contacts, you still have your staff intact. They can start becoming more outbound ambassadors.
Yeah.
And it really has an amazing effect on them as well as on your customers. So first thing is figure out who isn't contacting you. And second of all, come up with some sort of an outreach program.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for the question. All right. Well, if there are other questions, and Umberto might have a few as well, happy to shoot them over to me. I'll be happy to add some responses to them. And I wish you the best. Good luck.